This is a featured UK Talk Radio Top Business.
UK Talk Radio, welcome. We're in Salisbury, and I can see Salisbury Cathedral in front of me on this beautiful September afternoon, on the cusp of summer and autumn. It's absolutely idyllic view in front of me, and I've got also Andy Ford with me on UK Talk Radio today. Welcome, Andy.
Thank you. Good morning.
Andy, why have you come to join us today? Tell us about yourself. You're a Salisbury man.
I am a Salisbury man, yes. I'm a medium, so I bring forth messages and proof from those that have passed over. I'm also a palmist. Obviously, reading the lines in the hands, the shapes, that sort of thing. I'm a tarot reader, so I read cards. So I teach, from that sort of things. And backing those sort of things up, I'm also a hypnotherapist and an LP master. So, it all comes together, funny enough, and can all be used together in many ways.
It goes without saying that you love to help people.
I do, yes. Yeah, I think that's it. All of it comes down to healing.
Yeah, and that's what we like here on UK Talk Radio. This is our niche, if you like. And this is something that you've been doing seriously for about 20 years now. It
is about 20 years, yes. It's been a progress from where I first started, learning different things, learning different aspects. A friend of mine once said when I first started, what you need to do is build a spiritual toolbox. So put many spiritual gifts in there so that those people that walk in through the door can be helped by what you can pull out of your toolbox.
Andy, what's the first thing that you would say to somebody who's very sceptical or extremely cynical or dismissive of these kinds of things?
I suppose the first thing I'd say is to actually keep an open mind and go out and investigate. I don't mean just the spiritual side, because these days the science is coming back into this as well. There is a science behind what we do. There are many scientists that are involved in looking at this aspect. I believe there's one in America that I think he's written a book about this, that through quantum physics he can prove that we're in touch with an intelligence from another dimension, but can't quite prove it's the intelligence of those that have gone over. So in the past there have been many scientists that have been involved in looking at the aspect of the mediumship, and there's a lot of information, you might call it proof, out there that people that are a bit more sceptical might wish to have a look at to get a more formulated view on it, really.
Would you say there are some charlatans in the industry, for want of a better word? Unfortunately,
yes. I think in any industry there's always those that think or want to make a quick buck, really, at the end of the day. And they don't really care how they go about it. They want to fleece them of their money because that's what they want. And they'll use whatever it is, whether it's grief, need or whatever, against that person. And unfortunately, they are out there. And yeah, people do have to be wary. And I think if they're thinking about going to somebody, then please do investigate that person, And
this is something we want to emphasise. We can't emphasise it enough to our listeners, can we?
That's right.
To be able to differentiate and distinguish. Now, a very interesting angle you wanted to take, Andy, today, and this is on the subject of the spiritual state of people with dementia or Alzheimer's.
That's right.
Something I've thought about myself in the past, and when you mentioned it before the interview, I thought, what a great angle. Tell us more.
It's happened to me several times. I've been doing what is a medium demonstration. That's where I'm stood up in front of a group of people, bringing through their loved ones for them. And the one night I brought through this lady's father, and she was accepting everything I was saying. Yep, everything was fine. She was accepting all the information, everything. And at the end of it, she said, he is still alive, but he's got extreme dementia. And this has happened a couple of times to me. And it's made me think, and made me look at the aspect that actually those people are most probably in the two different worlds, the two different dimensions. They're here, but they're also in the spirit world at the same time. And because they're there, because the clarity they have when they're in fact what I call at home, they then use that to come back through to actually talk to their loved ones, often to say things that, in case of this lady's father, he couldn't say actually while he was sort of physically here, if we put it that way, Yeah. So there's been a few occasions like that. Even the occasion that's slightly different, that I brought through a gentleman's mother-in-law. Same situation, exactly, everything was correct. He said, I'll tell you something in a moment. And when we got through and I said, you accept all the information? He said, yeah, you're spot on. He said, in fact, actually, she's dying at the moment.
Yeah.
And later that night, she died. So my belief is that she'd actually already passed to the other world. It was just a physical body that was then left functioning in this.
I don't know, has your experience been similar to mine with dementia, Andy, in that they seem to kind of, if you like, for want of a better word, flit between both worlds. So sometimes they're more lucid than others, and they kind of, sometimes they can shock you with how lucid and in touch with the mundane here and now they are, but then other times they just seem to be a million miles literally away from that.
I think you're quite right. I think it is that, they're actually flitting between the two worlds. And I think more and more as they deepen dementia, they're spending more of their time in the other world.
Because the soul is gradually going away from the body. Yeah.
Although there's still that connection to the body here, they're mainly in the other world. But as you said, at the start, often you get more of a flick. One day they seem to be, quite fine. The next day, they're they don't seem to know anything, which is a great, it is so shocking and so, so much for the families to have to deal with here because, it's
Do you think you can give comfort, Andy, to people that are dealing with a loved one in a dementia situation?
I think so. I think on the basis that, especially in the case, or the couple of cases where I'll give them messages, the comfort has actually come from the fact that, one, they know really that the loved one is fine, really, and the fact that this loved one has managed to come through and say things to them that perhaps they couldn't do when they were really, I don't want to say compos mentis, but, totally aware in this reality. They might have struggled with their feelings, not being able to express things, but because they were in the other world, it's almost like they freed themselves of that and then able to be able to come back and say truly for that person, this is what I really want to say to you. I really do love you,
Yes. Wonderful. Now, forgive me if this is a really naff analogy, but when you go into kind of like a snooze and it's not a deep sleep, when, so you've got to be up in an hour's time, so you think, I'll get another, hour's sleep. And so you go into not a deep sleep, but you go into a kind of halfway. So kind of, you're going under, but you're still very much aware and connected with your routine of that day and the room you're in and what you've got to do and all that. Do you know what I mean? When
I do,
kind
yes.
of like halfway between the land of Nod and the land of
I think that's a good way of putting it, really. I think it is. I mean, often the fact is that, when, you hear stories about people passing over, they literally are in that almost like dream state. It's almost like they can start to see their loved ones already starting to come to actually, to join them, to be there at the passing.
Yeah.
I was told a story about a similar occasion when somebody actually entered into a coma. And while in the coma, they came back through a medium and communicated. So again, I think what you're talking about really is altered states of consciousness. When we go into a sleep state, we go into an altered state of consciousness.
Yeah.
I think when we daydream, we go into an altered state of consciousness. And I think it's this altered state of consciousness, which is a bit like, the outside is that it's a bit like going into that dream state. You're losing essences of what this reality is, but going into literally another reality.
Mm-hmm. Give us your website for the listeners, please, Andy.
Yes, my website is www.andy-ford.com.
And Andy, obviously you can do 101 different things to help people. What would you say, is it possible for you to say what your what's the holy grail for you? What do you really love more than anything else? What's your speciality? Which do you get the most buzz out of?
I think basically it is literally reuniting somebody with their loved one.
Yeah.
Because it's, you can feel that, you know, there might have been something that, you know, they needed to release in themselves, or they were worried about, you know, is the other person still hurting, you know, is still in pain, and because you can bring that to that person, and that, you know, the loved one is saying they're fine, you know, it almost, you can feel it lifts from them, you know, they go in such a lighter state, happier. The thought, actually, you know, my loved one, whoever it is, my husband, whoever, is actually still alive. You know, they're still living.
Yeah. And would you say it's always interesting to ask people like yourself, what sort of, for want of a better term, day jobs did you have before you went seriously into this? Was there any connection between your kind of mundane day job and what you do now, or is this a totally new life for you now?
It's a balance between, obviously, you know, as we all need in life, we all need that thing called money to live, you know.
Yes, money's an energy. If
That's
we just
right.
Keep reminding ourselves.
It is.
That helps.
So I do have a job as well during the day.
Yeah.
I mean, it's varied over the years. I mainly was at the start. I was in IT from that side of things, so it was very sort of
kind of a very different world, you might say.
Very different world. And again, I have then moved into different worlds. Like I was often offered redundancy, so I took it, and I thought I'll go and change my life a bit. So I ended up working in the 3 prisons on the Isle of Wight, running thinking skills and sex offenders therapy sessions. So I moved on from there, and currently, and you'll love this, I'm a funeral arranger.
Right. Might be it's funny how we giggle at those sort of things.
That's right, yes.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people then look at me like I'm something of the Addams family, you say, you know.
Yeah. You're multifaceted, that's good. Yeah, you're not a Gemini, are you?
No, I'm a Taurian, actually.
Oh, right,
yes,
I get that. Yeah, there's a Taurian air about you.
Yeah, and it's one of those sort of things I often say is part of my life lessons, is because us Taurians, we like to know things. You know, we like to know how to do this. We like to, you know, we like to plan things.
You like to kind of get grounded in practicality, don't you, as well?
So when I work with the other world, the last thing they will let me do is get into that state. They've always told me that. They will change the way I work when I'm working in the evening demonstration to keep me on my toes.
It's a good balance, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because Taurus is all about earthiness and groundedness, isn't it?
That's right.
Whereas, of course, what you're doing could be seen as kind of the opposite, you know,
That's
the
right.
opposite extreme.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, what's that expression I read? Have your head in the clouds, but keep your feet on the ground.
That's right, yeah. It is, that's true. Yes.
What date is your birthday, Andy?
I'm the 18th of May.
Oh, right. So you're actually probably sort of on the cusp.
I am, yes.
The cusp week between Taurus and Gemini.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I could talk to you for another 2 hours at least, and then it would seem like half an hour. So we'll sign off there. But
That's great.
thank you very much for coming into the studio here in Salisbury.
No, thank you for inviting me.
It's been great.
Yeah, thank you.
And to be able to do this show with that view behind us, that
it's
we've got
beautiful.
at the moment of
Yes.
the Salisbury Cathedral there, it's lovely. Thank you very much, Andy.
Thank you very much.
That was Andy Ford on UK Talk Radio.
This is a featured UK Talk Radio top business.